Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be discussing something that's kind of a broad topic. It's not really a news topic, although it's something that's kind of been seeping into the news lately. And that's kind of the idea of like how you're supposed to watch a movie. Now, I covered in one of my previous videos the whole thing where people were kind of upset about that variable speed function for Netflix. There's also been a few things going on with films that are being shown on airlines with having certain sexually explicit content removed from those films, and the people that made those films being very upset with that. And look, there's a number of ways that you can watch a film. If you want to watch a film in reverse with the sound off and just for shits and giggles, then you can do that. If that's what entertains you, then be my guest. They always have they always have the joke about, oh, if you watch Cinderella in reverse, it's a movie about a rich aristocratic woman who becomes like a housemaid or something. It's kind of that type of a joke. But look, the thing is that they're very upset about people not watching their films as they intended them to be watched. And I think there's some factors that I think people should understand in Hollywood specifically about entertainment, and that's that entertainment is subjective. And again, this is something that should be common sense. But the idea of if something is not entertaining to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It just means that maybe it's not your thing. I don't sit down and watch rom-coms, romantic comedies. I don't really sit down and watch those. They don't really appeal to me. I like, the vulgar comedies. I like stuff like, Mel Brooks stuff like Blazing Saddles, or, even some more modern stuff like The Hangover, the first one anyway, and stuff like that. It's the vulgar comedies are really what I find to be funny. But, the other stuff, the more family-friendly stuff, you have stuff like Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock in The Proposal. I didn't find that funny. Some of them are funny. You look at like say Forgetting Sarah Marshall, stuff like that is kind of amusing. But the thing is that movies and entertainment in general is subjective to the individual. And to say that if that individual chooses to consume your media in a certain way, that they are wrong in doing that, I think is kind of it's a bad precedent to try and set. And I get the idea, like, okay, this is how you want it to be shown so that you get the best experience. But again, that is ultimately up to the audience. If you want to say that, that's fine, because it's your product. You have made it. You're the director, or you acted in it, or you edited it, or you did the sound mixing or something like that. So if you were involved in a production and you say, this is how this film should be viewed, or how I believe it should be viewed for entertainment values, that's fine. But I don't think you should be condemning people for viewing it or choosing to view it or given the option to view it in an alternate way. Now, that's more to cover the Netflix thing, which again I already covered in another video more in depth. If you want more on that, you can go view that video. But the airline thing is a little bit of a different story, but I still kind of defend it to a sense. Is that the people that were involved in those two films were upset that I believe it was Rocket Man was one of them, and I forget what the other one was. It was directed by Olivia Wilde, but they both had explicit sex scenes in them. And those sex scenes were removed for an in-flight movie on a plane. I believe it was JetBlue that had those movies up. And I understand that from a perspective that you're on a plane and there may be children around or there might be something. So editing a movie like that makes kind of sense to me. It's kind of like when you put a movie on television, when you're putting it on a channel and they edit out the nudity and they edit out the swearing and stuff like that. Obviously it's not as good as if it had those things in it. And it's not as complete, but again, I understand it because kids could be watching it. So I get the idea. You don't necessarily want to expose, especially small children, to that type of thing. So I don't really have a problem with the airlines doing this. Again, it's an airline movie where when these people say that, do you really think that the optimal place to view your movie is on an airplane? Because if you do, that's kind of sad. Optimally, movies should be viewed in the theater or, as a close second, at home, on your home entertainment system or something like that. But it's very odd to kind of see this sort of backlash from Hollywood people about this, because it kind of shows that they don't really have that much common sense. And, I know people in the comments are going to say, like, oh, of course they never had common sense. It's like, yeah, but it's kind of the thing that, like, the studio should be telling them to shut the fuck up. to be fair. That's really what should be happening here. The studio should be saying, look, they have a right to do this. They're showing the movie on their planes, or they're showing the movie in this format. It's not like a theater where they can control the people that are seeing the movie, where they can check IDs and stuff like that. These are things that are rented on airplanes or shown on airplanes. And to be frank, look, if you don't want them to do that, then they're just not going to show your movie as an in-flight movie, which again is not necessarily a big loss, because a lot of these films are, indies to some extent. Rocket Man was a bit more mainstream just because it was, kind of following up on Bohemian Rhapsody, but that's kind of the idea here. Is like, look, I can understand why they edited these films, and I think they had a valid reason for doing so. And really, if you want people to watch it, then look, they can get the unedited version. They can go watch, if it's still in theaters, they can go watch it in theaters. If it's on home release, they can get it on home release, either through renting or buying a physical copy or something like that. They can get these movies uncut if they so choose to view them, but they happen to be on a plane and they're cutting that scene out. So look, I don't think it's the end of the world. People are saying, "Oh, this is censorship. They're anti-gay rights," because both of the sex scenes in question were homosexual. They're like, "Oh, they're against gay and lesbian rights and stuff like that." And like, no, they just don't want little kids to be able to see it if somebody wants to rent that movie. We all know how airplanes work. A little kid can look over to the next seat and they can see the little screen that's built into the back of the other seat, and they can see the movie going on. I get the idea behind that. It's not anything that's too novel, and it makes sense. And television has been doing it for years. So if you're going to go after the airlines for doing that, you better be going after television for doing it too, because television has been doing that for decades. Ever since they started showing movies on TV, they've been doing that. And then you got to go to the MPAA, then you got to go to all this other stuff. So it's very hypocritical for them to point the fingers at the airlines when television companies have been doing this for many, many years. And again, television's gotten a bit more lax, especially in recent years. You can say certain stuff after, I think it's after 11 p.m. at night or something like that. You can say fuck on television and shit. But again, it's one of those things that I feel like it's an overreaction by Hollywood. They are overly sensitive to certain things, and they can't see the practicality of doing certain things in regards to their films. And again, it's just kind of an observation I've been making lately, because it's been coming up in the news lately in various forms. Again, the two that I just mentioned. But I think they need to learn that, look, ultimately, if people are entertained by the product, that's what matters. If it's not necessarily in the way you intended it to be viewed, then once you've released that product, that is out on the airwaves. That is no longer under your control. The only control you have over that film is when you are actually making it. When you're in the production, when you're in the editing room. Once it is released out into the ether, you have zero control over how people choose to interpret that film. They can see things in that film that you never even intended them to see or never wanted it there. Again, it's all about personal interpretation. So it feels like they're trying to take that away, and they're saying like, "Oh, if you don't see it the way that I see it, then you're wrong." It's like, no, that's not necessarily right. And again, this goes back to the argument of you're allowed to dislike or like a film depending on, what your personal preferences are. And I've been over this before. I hate The Last Jedi. I hate it with a vitriol. I hate Star Trek Into Darkness as well. But there are people that like those movies. And that's fine if you like those movies. I think they are objectively bad, and I think I can provide reasons why they're objectively bad. But if you choose that form of entertainment for yourself, then there is no reason and there is no reason why you can't continue to enjoy those things, even if they're objectively bad. Again, I love horrible, horrible, horrible movies. So I can't really argue with that fact. I love movies that are objectively bad. I love movies like Big Trouble in Little China, or watching something like Lucio Fulci's Zombie, or watching these horrible, horrible films that were made. That and I have an appreciation for good cinema as well, but they're guilty pleasure movies. They're movies that I realize are bad, but I enjoy them. And whether I watch them how they were intended, or whether I watch them how the director intended or the studio intended or whatever. Again, we have multiple cuts of movies. Look at Blade Runner; it has like 20 different cuts. So it's not anything that's too outrageous or too insane. Because in a lot of cases, the version that goes out to the public may not be the version the director wanted to make. And that's another kind of wrinkle to this whole thing. But that's just kind of my opinion on it. Is that everything involving entertainment to an extent is subjective. And even though I've been critical of studios and stuff in the past, especially recently with Terminator Dark Fate and Rise of Skywalker and stuff, I try to be objective in the way that I criticize certain films and what the public expects out of those films and what the fans of those films expect out of them. But again, if you like that particular piece of media, then continue to like it. There's no reason why you can't. And I'm not here to tell you that you can't like it. I'm just here to point out things that, okay, if you're a fan of this, maybe you won't like it. But again, that's my kind of stance on this whole thing of how to watch a movie. It's like, it's up to you. Ultimately, it is up to you. But I want to know your opinion. Do you think that movies should really just be kept the way they are and shown the way that the director wants them to be shown, or do you think that it's really more of a subjective thing? In terms of cutting certain scenes out if they're going to be shown in places where you can't really control who is actually watching them. Again, I'd like to know your opinion, so put your opinions in the comments. Make sure to hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?